number of years ago, translating that terrible letter from hell from French into English, I came across a passage which had to do with little children receiving Holy Communion. The damned soul said something to this effect: "Pwah! How horrible the thought of it, an innocent child receiving that white host. What we need," she was speaking on behalf of the demon, "was souls already corrupted." And so we see that the demon takes great pleasure in corrupting the young and in making sure that their first Eucharistic encounter is already contaminated. It would seem that St. Pius X was greatly influenced by an uncanonized Irish lassie, referred to popularly as Nellie of Holy God, in seeing that children can indeed receive huge graces and have great awareness with regard to their first communion. Nellie only wanted that, and she got her wish. And many are the examples of little children who have known far more than many an adult with regard to the Eucharistic Lord. The Lord delights in the little ones. It would seem that in bringing forward the possibility of Holy Communion, in many places it was also coupled with a fairly early confirmation, for the simple reason that often families couldn't afford two big events. I remember hearing that in Italy. The little people have little going on in their life, and these are big events. Later on, especially in our day, other big events crowd out these invisible ones and take center stage. Indeed, is it not true that a football is far more important than a host, especially on a Sunday morning? This great pontiff was the son of a postman. He knew people and had met them where they were. He was one of the few pontiffs to have spent a long time in pastoral ministry. Therefore, as we would say, one of the bobbies on the beat. He knew how souls functioned and how parishes functioned, and he reacted against the dysfunctionality of parish life on the liturgical level. It is nonsensical to have the priest doing his own thing at one end of the church and the people their own at the other. They must pray the Mass and they must be taking part in it and not praying something else during it. Singing is a great mode of joining the community together in creating an atmosphere for the Lord. He therefore became important in liturgical renewal already at the beginning of the last century. He was also aware of the power of the demon. Remember that he was coming immediately after Leo XIII, who had had an encounter with demonic forces. He would surely have known of the strange experience of Leo XIII precisely after Holy Mass, during his Thanksgiving. The demon hates the liturgy and he loves error. And Pope Pius X reacted very strongly against incipient error. Modernism he defined as the synthesis of all heresies. And yet, what he was reacting against has come in through a back door. We need to be aware. We know from exorcism that the demon uses greatly intellects that have sway and access to other intellects. The power of the intelligentsia is huge in the ecclesiastical sphere. The more a person has in the realm of credentials, the more power he has in the eyes of the common people, and the more dangerous he can be. Isn't it the height of presumption to think that we're the first to discover something? One can fall in love with one's own ideas. The demon knows exactly how to get in. It's through introducing just enough truth to make it look correct, and then by attachment to put in an extra bit, which is not. And on he goes. And the people can't tell the difference. What is heard in one place quickly goes on to another. What is practiced in one place quickly gets imitated in another. And bit by bit, through demonic force, a new norm comes into play and acquires authority, and woe betide anyone who fights against it or even makes a noise. Get back to your place, you square. And so it is that one classes people who are genuinely aware as retrograde, trad, conservative. Any label will do as long as he's not acceptable. And the demon goes on. It is interesting that the Society of St. Pius X took this patron saint as its guardian, presumably because of the insistence of this saint with regard to orthodoxy. The canonical situation of the Society is still not clear. We are hoping and praying for healing and reconciliation, for we need them. But one has to have peace of heart, and it is difficult to know exactly how one can have complete peace of heart when one hasn't a mandate. The mandate must come from the local bishop. Nicil sine episcopo, insisted St. Ignatius of Antioch. Nothing without the bishop. Having said that, just as we need the East, so we need those who are aware of things precisely because they have suffered and are still suffering. From by now a generalized situation which is defended by the structure, whereas the others are not. It's sufficient that one celebrates the present Mass to be okay, whereas the others are outlawed, at least in the popular mind. It is not fair. And Benedict XVI knew it wasn't fair, and he protested in his gentle way, insisting that there are always there's one category always which is irredeemable in the popular eyes. One has rights to cast stones at a certain class always. Well, if one looks around, why is it that vocations go to certain sectors and not elsewhere? One can perhaps tentatively suggest that it might be the Lord is not obliged to call there where there will be a further attack upon himself. Why should the Lord call to find that those then who go into a certain situation will become part of a problem, of a huge attack, an aggressive attack on the sacred and on himself? Whereas gently, those who are ordained in a sacred atmosphere which is completely protected will not in any way offend, at least at the altar. If St. Pius X were to come back to some of our celebrations today, would he perhaps include some of our norms as modernist? Alas, the demon hates with a perfect hatred the Catholic Church and knows full well how best to destroy it. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer. Divide and conquer being his name, Diavolos, the one who gets in the midst, Dia, and bursts asunder. Volley. La la